Hello, I'm Ricky LaVaughn, author of Repeat Offender, and this author advice is regarding writing a first-person point of view story. First-person point of view is a story that is told through the primary character. For example, in Eoin Colfer's Plugged and Screwed books are told exclusively through the main character of Daniel McAvoy. The story's perspective is from Daniel, which means if he likes a character, we hear about it. If he doesn't like an incident, we know. If he relates a current situation to an old-time war story, then that gets told, and all his inner thoughts are on constant display. The story is tinged with the character, and the same thing happens in Repeat Offender. Repeat Offender is a first-person POV novel, with the entire thing being told by Henry Hall. Like the Eoin Colfer books, Henry is the person in which the entire story is narrated through him. His innermost feelings, thoughts, issues, and ideas is all through him. There are several points to consider when writing a first person, and this video will cover some of them to help you get started. First, really consider if the story should be written from a first person point of view. Please make this decision early. Don't get halfway through the book and realize that's not a good idea to write exclusively from one character's point of view. Consider if the character is reliable. For example, in Rinrose's Cry, I wasn't sure if I could exclusively write from one of the main characters because she has multiple personality disorder. I didn't know how that would work, and that being my first published story, wasn't comfortable writing a first-person POV with someone who has, multiple first persons. And when considering writing in first person, make sure it's a good idea. For Repeat Offender, it was best to tell the story from Henry's viewpoint, because I want the reader to learn the mystery and secrets the same time as him. If I had told the same story from multiple points of view, the secret information would have been out early and the novel would have seemed dulled or slowed. I suggest writing a brief outline of the story. This is a basic, very basic idea of the story and how you want it to go. With this, you're not discerning about points of view, but what is important to the overall summary of the story. The outline should help you see what characters are primary, characters are interesting, or even what characters are essential, and if it would be better to write from one particular person or told through a third-person narrator. Now, don't ignore using third-person, omniscient, or limited points of view story writing. An entire story can be told from the viewpoint of one of your characters, but not necessarily from them specifically. Most novels are written to follow one character. One example of this is in The Fifth Heart by Dan Simmons, which primarily follows just two characters. Many other characters, though, tend to only go with just one. Most of the Harry Potter books, there are some exceptions, actually just pretty much primarily follow just Harry Potter. Now, nevertheless, once you've written the outline and know you want to write in first person, it's time to consider a few other points, which is actually in no particular order. Point number 2. Is your character likable? This is very, I can't stress this enough, very important. Your character must be likable. Sometimes a story can be so-so, but if the character is amazing or likable, a reader will continue to follow along with that book or story. Sometimes, though, the opposite is true as well. For me, when reading the books, the Magician series, and also Eragon Tales, the stories themselves were incredible. Everything about it was interesting. However, this is just for me, the main character of both were constantly complaining and kind of brought the story down with their own self-pity in a way. Now, this was just for me. I felt like this. But both series are wildly popular, so there are thousands, if not millions, who love both series. One of them even have a TV show based off of it, and the other, I believe, had a movie. And I assume the main character is what they also loved as well from these series. But, in spite of this, there can be cases where if your main character, the one who's telling the story, is unlikable, then to most readers they would not want to continue with that particular character and or literary person. And also remember that it's not just the heroes aren't the only ones who can be likable and or memorable. The villain can be a terrible person, but yet still likable. Look at some of the most memorable villains in Star Wars. Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, Thrawn, Darth Plagueis, Tarkin, Captain Phasma, and even Boba Fett are all popular villains that people like and follow. In Marvel's Avengers Infinity War, Thanos was clearly a villain, and yet people understood where he was coming from. And some even enjoyed him while he was on screen, and there are oodles of videos, if you just go through YouTube, who kind of agree with some of the thoughts that Thanos have, which was killing half of all life. So even in spite of that, you can still write characters that are very much likable, even if they're terrible. So your heroes should definitely be no exception to that rule. Now, people, they might not have to agree with him. I'm talking about whoever the character is, whether they're good or bad or whoever they might be, but there has to be something humanizing about their personality and their motivations. The main character must be someone not only that you like, but remember that other people have to enjoy them as well, not just you, the author. Point number 3. Is your character interesting? And what I mean by this is your character someone you want to read and learn more? Someone you want to go on an adventure or journey? The worst kind of character is a bland and uninteresting character. It sucks when a person doesn't want to do anything or has no opinions, no character, or no feelings. If your character doesn't pop, then add something to them that helps. Sometimes you need to maybe add a flaw and allow the character to overcome that flaw. Or quirkiness can help. Don't forget about the secondary characters as well. I can't stand it when everyone around the main character has no personality, except for how they relate to the main person. No one lives like that. Everyone has their own life, and it's more interesting when your character is also interacting with cool and interesting characters as well. Point number 4. The action of the story should flow through the main character. Or at least the main character should be involved. It is terrible when reading a story and way more interesting stuff happens away from the character. Now, a great example of this is actually in the Hunger Games trilogy. The first 2 books are interesting because the main character is in the center of the action. The main crux and action of the story happens in the danger room or battle zone, and however, the last book has a variety of battles, scrimmages, secret plans, and more that happens away from the main character. The entire time I kept thinking, man, I would really like to know more about what is going on elsewhere. That's not to say that there wasn't some interesting story threads that follow the main character, but the last book would have been helped if it was told in a third person's point of view. But I understand where the author was coming from, because the first 2 books was told from a first person point of view. So sometimes you have to be able to balance that out. And I thought as a whole the last story was told very well, considering that there was some sort of limitations on the way the story was told compared to what was going on. It happens. Sometimes you just have to plan around that and do the absolute best that you can. But you really want that main crux of the story to be able to flow through the character. At least the main character that we're following. The last point to consider is to remember that the book is told through that character. Now, which means the themes, language, and feel of the story is from them. If the character is humorous, the tone of the book should be funny. If the character is cantankerous, it should have that feel as well. Because they are telling the story. The entire book must feel like that. Sometimes the worst mistake an author can make is in the middle of the book, chapter, paragraph, or section, the tone switches from the character to the author themselves. Not only is this jarring, but a reader can tell that it's the author and not the character. This will take the person out of the story and make you realize that you're reading a story instead of experiencing the characters within. Well, that's all for now, but I hope that helps writing in first person. Read Repeat Offender for an example of a story written with this point of view. For more information, click on the link in the description below, and for more videos, free information, and of course, to get a copy for yourself. Thank you so much, and have a great day.